All right, something that I want to point out that I didn't point out in the first video. So it makes sense if you're going to go with a different name, it's such a position. You're going to say, I'm the vicar of Christ, and, I'm going to be calling the shots of doctrine here. It makes sense to go with the Apostle John's name because he was the most intimate possible with Christ. So it makes sense to go with John. What's funny is they say the first not to use personal name Mercurius as associated with the Roman god Mercury. Well, if you go just to a very previous person they claim was Pope, you see that it means son of Zeus. How is that much better than the name associated with the Roman god Mercury? It's still a similar problem. Okay, so it appears to me they're trying to cover it up. That suggests to me that that's not the real reason why he didn't use a personal name. Because if you're going to be consistent with the logic, then he would have used a different name, as his name associated with son of Zeus. Okay, which is also considered a god. So it's not a valid, or I'm sorry, discourse. So it's not a valid reason if you got the same problem beforehand and they didn't change the names. Okay, so there, again, it had been a different reason. And go back to my first video on this. It's most likely suggest the reason why you use a different name was due to knowing you're going to get resistance from the state. You're trying to pull away from the state or withdraw from the state so that the church can get that power, and that would completely eliminate the state from having any say-so over doctrine or any infallibility with doctrine. And so the idea, actually, when was magisterium invented? Okay, magisterium invented. What year? It had been later. Okay. Formally defined. Okay, so it was formally defined by the First Vatican Council in the 18th. So it makes sense. Okay. It's a firm. Yeah. So this was after, long after, just the 535 to 533 to 535. So the idea of a magisterium. So the whole purpose of this had been just to withdraw that power to Pontiff Maximus from the state and transfer it over to the church. And then later on, the idea of magisterium was invented. So anyway, I hope this makes sense what I'm trying to say. I'm not the best communicator in the world. I recognize that. But just using logic here, in all likelihood, this was the first pope at number 56. The 55 plus prior, I should say, these were all fabricated to make it appear that that they were the consistent lineage all the way to Peter. And anybody who knows how to remove presuppositions using hermeneutics, obtaining the author's intent, obtaining the original audience's perspective, you realize Peter, no way, a pope. Peter never, when he knew he was going to die in the second epistle, he made no mention about succession of any kind of form. Now keep in mind, papyrus was very expensive back then, so you had to really think things through before you write something. It's not like paper is cheap, you just write and then you throw it out and then rewrite something. But papyrus is very expensive, so you had to really think through what you're going to say. So if he's saying that the Lord telling him he's going to die soon, he's going to say something about succession in that same papyrus. Again, it was very expensive, and he would have said so in the second epistle, but he did not. So, Catholics would use John 21 to proof, or shepherd, but look at the audience there. It was entirely the house of Israel. It was not Gentiles. Paul came on the scene later on, apostle of Gentiles. Peter only preached the gospel one time to Gentiles. That was in Acts chapter 10. That was that one day. That was actually the last day of Daniel's 70th week. That was in September of the year 33 AD. So, Christ died in year 30. A lot of people believe in year 33. That's just, I see where they're coming from, but that's not the case. But anyway, a lot of use John 21. No, he was shepherd over the house of Israel. And did he do that? Yes. His first epistle, 1 Peter, indicated that. And if you look at it from a Jewish perspective, you'll see he was actually shepherding the Jewish people. If you look at a Gentile perspective, you're not going to see that, which is most common today. People just don't see it. People will use Matthew 16. Clearly, the Father revealed to him Peter was the Christ. There was that interchange. 1 John chapter 5, verse 1 tells us what was going on inside of Peter. And that's what the church is built on. It's built on the Spirit of Christ, Revelation chapter 1, verse 18, which overcame Hades. Peter never overcame Hades. Whether you want to believe that the church built on flesh and blood, which is farce, or if you want to believe it was built on Peter's Spirit, either way, your theology is way off. you are in a dream state, not recognizing the realities of the spiritual realities of the church in that passage in Matthew 16, chapter 16, verses 17 to 19. And we see 2 chapters later, the other apostles also had the keys to the kingdom, binding and loosing for the kingdom. So, anyway, so those are just my thoughts. Just definitely really heavily point this was the first pope. And notice John's second. And so it wasn't very difficult to modify history back then. They did not have the block press back then. They did not have the printing press back then. They were still heavily using papyrus. Even though paper had been in the 2nd century by the Chinese, papyrus is still heavily used in the Roman Empire. So it's very not difficult at all to modify church history and get away with it. Not like today with the internet and the printing press and all that. They didn't have they didn't have the block press at this time. That didn't come out until the 8th century. So it makes sense that in the 6th century it was the first pope, and they just rewrite from there. So by saying that, this person, John first. Now what's funny is, this is his personal name, right? But obviously he renamed it right there. And yet, here they're saying the first pope not to use his personal name. But right here, this is a clear indication he's not using the personal name. Do you see the problem here? Do you see the error, the discrepancy? So, again, it points he was the first pope, and this name was just used to make it more believable that there was a succession of popes by calling him St. John Pope John first, okay, and make this guy the second. That way it makes it more believable a succession of popes. So either this guy was the first one to use not to use the personal name, or this guy. But obviously Loans, the personal name Loans, is not John. They don't match. Do you not see the discrepancy? Do you not see the problem here? So, So again, I really think this was the first pope. All logic, and I'm a pretty logical thinker. Much more so than a lot of your Catholic apologists, senior apologists. So it heavily points this was the first pope. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and hope you have a good day.